Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And in this video, I wanted to share these AT&T second quarter 2023 highlights with you guys, discuss them, talk about it in a bit more detail, and of course, give you guys my commentary and opinions. So AT&T overall, they had a very solid quarter, maybe one of the more underrated quarters, if you will, in the industry. Right? Verizon had a decent quarter when it came to financials. If you look at the free cash flow, if that's all you're looking at, if you're an investor, if you're hoping and praying that they can pay out the dividend, they had a great quarter on that in terms of the free cash flow. Now, AT&T, they're not spectacular. They don't give much updates. They're very quiet during the quarterly periods. They're not flashy. They're not putting out press releases every day. They just work. And that's what they continue to do, and it seems to be working for them. So the total net adds, they added 464,000. Out of that 464,000, they added 326,000 postpaid phone net adds. That's good for AT&T. Although they had a bit of a lower volume there, they still grew over 300,000. And compare that to Verizon, they only did 8,000. So, big difference there. So keep that in mind. Also, on the fiber side, really quickly, they now have a total of 7.7 million subscribers. They added 251,000 fiber customers during that quarter. That's a big deal, in my opinion, because that'll also lead to wireless growth. They are now at a total of 25 million locations passed with fiber, so that will continue growing on a quarterly basis. And the consumer penetration is now at 38%. Also, one thing to note, AT&T has now officially passed 175 plus million pops covered with C-band. That's very interesting, right? They started off behind, if you guys remember. When Verizon was well ahead at well over 100 million, AT&T reported 75 million. They must have kicked into another gear. They'll be at 200 million, maybe a little more by the end of the year. And Verizon will maybe be at 230, 240 the best. So there'll be about a 40 million pop gap between the two. Of course, that's still a big gap, but AT&T will have the main top 200 covered, which will give them nationwide mid-band coverage per the FCC. And that should be a lot of the big major markets should now have the C-band, at least the C-band layer. The DoD, that's another story. A lot of markets are not getting the DoD. Some of the markets that have the C-band are not getting the DoD, and AT&T may not go back to those sites for a very long time until they experience congestion, or there are just other issues. But for now, the sites that have the C-band DoD, of course, those will broadcast. But what I think they are going to do with the sites that have C-band only, I think when the dual band radio panels are available, I think AT&T will go back to those sites. Instead of running two separate panels, I think they're just going to swap out and put on a dual band radio that can do C-band and DoD at the same time. So I think that's impressive, right? All the back and forth, AT&T this, AT&T that, they managed to get out 175 plus million pops with C-band, right? The network is better for it. They're speeding up. Although, competitively speaking, again, they lack scale, especially to T-Mobile. They lack scale to Verizon on the mid-band. But they're not doing fixed wireless access at scale. So as long as the mobile user can make use of it and it's good enough, that's all that matters. And you will see that with the next one that I'm going to discuss. Phone churn. They have the industry-leading phone churn now. Verizon's was at 0.83% on the postpaid side. Theirs is at 0.79%. Unless T-Mobile is lower than 0.79%, which I doubt, AT&T will have the leading phone churn on postpaid. It's good to see. Many of you will point out that a large part of that reason is customers being locked in on that 3-year price point. But keep in mind, just throwing it out there, T-Mobile is running a specific Un-carrier promotion for those customers. And it seems they're not biting, right? 0.79%. Again, if they were porting out at a higher rate, we would see that in the phone churn. Just pointing that out. Again, I've seen some of the internal documents. A lot of the port outs and port-ins going to T-Mobile are still largely coming from Verizon. It's not AT&T. So whatever they're doing, it must be working. So another thing I wanted to point out is ARPU. Fiber has a very healthy ARPU at $66.70. That's up 8.2%. That's very good. That kind of tells you that they're pushing that as a premium product, and that's what it is. It's the ultimate best product you can have in your home. Is this fiber product going directly to the premises, and it shows. People are willing to pay. Now, of course, they're not disclosing any churn profile on that, but they're telling you by the ARPU, they are taking in a $66, almost $67 ARPU on this product. That's really good for financials, and we'll talk about that here in a bit too. And then the postpaid ARPU is at $55.63, up 1.5%, growing that a little bit lower, but again, a lot of competitive pressure there. Lots of other offers in the market that are cheaper, so AT&T has to remain competitive. So I don't expect too huge of upside on the ARPU on the postpaid side. Now, the revenues for the second quarter 2023, as I mentioned this morning, down a little at 29.9. Market was expecting like a little over 30 billion. Not too bad there. They did have an increase. So the free cash flow came in at 4.2 billion, much better than what we saw in the first quarter. First quarter was just a little over 1 billion. Excuse me. The market reacted very negative towards that. If you guys remember, the stock dropped like 10% that day. So that's good to see. Capital investment for the quarter, 5.9 billion. So they do invest, although a large part of that 5.9 billion, remember, is going to fiber. So keep that in mind. So this is good to see. Right? There's a lot of there are other metrics, but won't get into those. These are just the individual breakdowns. As you can see, wireless still making most of the money. So I think that should be what AT&T is focusing on. But again, spoken with many different people, there isn't much more for upside for AT&T to gain in that business. They already have majority share in a lot of the enterprise sections that they operate. They got the car market. Yeah, they can get competitive and maybe take some of those agencies from Verizon, but again, there's not much more to grab. Versus T-Mobile, they have a whole lot to grab. They hardly have any share in any of those big enterprise businesses, government agencies, car manufacturers using them for Wi-Fi. There's not much. It's true. There's just not much more for AT&T to grab. Now, AT&T maintaining its position, I think that's important. Going after Verizon business customers, I think that's important for them. Of course, FirstNet plays a factor into everything, especially that 326,000 that they grew. I'm sure there's a good percentage of that coming from FirstNet. So that's still a very important part of AT&T's business as well. They have to continue investing in the network. They have to. Again, like I said, there is going to be a lower amount for that. But since 2017, I'll give them credit. They have been investing a huge chunk into this FirstNet operation. They have been receiving a lot of kickback from the government, reimbursements, and they seem to be moving forward with that. So we'll see what happens in Q3, but just wanted to go over these highlights. Just again, one thing that I want to note, they are past 175 million pops. They didn't disclose the exact number. They just added a plus. So I think at the end of the third quarter, they could probably be closing in on that 200 million because their wireless spending is usually second half heavy. That's when they really accelerate on upgrades. And I think that could be happening again. I'm seeing new sites pop up in El Paso. Although I don't want to make that sound like, exaggeration, they're still behind the competition on C-band and DoD to the sites and density overall. But in their own right, they do what's best for the company. And as you can see by these quarterly results, it seems to be working. So make sure you guys like, share, subscribe to the channel. Follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. See y'all in the next one. Peace.